Welcome to Paso a Paso, Immigration Help with Steve Miller.
Hey everybody, welcome back to an all-new episode of Paso a Paso, Immigration Help with Steve Miller. I'm your host, Mike Leon. Steve here is the founding attorney of Affordable Immigration. It's a faith-based law firm dedicated to helping immigrant families stay together and build their future here in the United States. And joining him today is Yanira Plazas from Affordable Immigration Senior Paralegal. She works closely with families every day as they prepare their immigration cases. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about waivers specifically. We're going to explain what they are, when you need one, and how they can sometimes be the key to keeping your family together. Steve, Yanira, good to see both of you. Steve, I'll start with you. When families first come to you guys, they're worried about their immigration history. What kind of problems or red flags do they usually bring up to you guys?
Well, thank you, Mike, for hosting us. It's a pleasure to talk to our clients about this issue because it's a very important issue. And so, we offer a free consultation, and in that consultation, we do a background check on all our clients. We ask them a lot of questions, and sometimes we ask them twice just to find out exactly what happened at the border. For example, when they came in, what's happened since they came to the United States, or if they haven't come to the United States yet, what is actually happening where they're at. To see if there's anything that could make them inadmissible or unacceptable. If you're inadmissible, there's probably crimes and there's unlawful presence, unlawful entries in the United States. Those things make the case very complicated. So and that's where the waivers come in. Waivers are a technical device by which we get a permission or a pardon for our clients so that they can progress and do the green card process.
And Yanira, anything that you want to add on that in terms of what you've seen as well, what clients have presented?
Yeah, I think that most of our clients, the majority of our cases include clients that entered the United States without permission. That's probably the most common waiver. And so people are unaware of what it takes to get a waiver approved. But I think a waiver is offered in many different scenarios. And today, specifically, we're going to be talking about all of that. But I think the most common one is the unlawful presence waiver is when somebody enters the United States without permission.
Well, let's expand on that because you just wandered into here. So how can a waiver help in those cases? Someone's here, unlawful presence, they've entered the United States without permission. Explain the process and how this waiver can help in the case.
Well, the first step is the petition. We file a petition for the applicant, and at the same time, we have to coach the petitioner that you need to prepare for a waiver because the petition is going to take about 15 months to get approved, and then we're going to submit a waiver. So then we have to have proof. And if a client is not seeing a doctor or they're not actually validating their extreme hardship claim, because you have to prove extreme hardship to get a 601A, an unlawful presence hardship waiver. So we have to coach people on how to do that and what steps they need to take to prepare for that waiver because it is a serious issue and the approval rate's probably about 75%. So not everybody gets approved. So you have to prepare and do the right steps in order to even in order to present a waiver.
Yanira, let me ask you, because I'm sure there are people out there, with all the news and the heightened tension around the subject of immigration itself. I'm sure there's a lot of people trying to get their documents in order. Maybe they have some false documents. Maybe they have given incorrect information in the past. Are there any waivers that can specifically help in those cases, or what can people do in those cases?
Yeah, so it kind of depends on the situation that you're in, right? So I'll give you an example of a client that entered the United States with the visa, but maybe their intention wasn't to actually just stay here to visit. Maybe their intention was to actually stay here permanently, right? So then that's what's considered visa fraud. And so when the client, give you the example that they marry a US citizen, because they entered legally, they are able to apply for their residency in their local district office. So this, if it's in Oregon, it would be here in Portland with USCIS. And at that time, if the officer determines that the applicant lied about their intention in staying here in the United States, then that's what would be 601, and that would be for fraud. Okay.
Mhm.
So the officer gives them this It's not a denial, it's a denial, but saying, you know what, there's a way to forgive that, and you need to file a 601. So we have to file a 601 waiver, and we have to document how the petitioner, so either their spouse who's a U.S. citizen, would suffer if they're not allowed to remain in the United States. Usually that entails a personal declaration, their medical records, if they've seen a therapist, so those mental health assessments, financial records, if they have children, like the children's medical records. I also like to use like their academic records because we want to show to them, right, that maybe this person has a child and maybe the child is doing well in school right now. But if they have this disruption of where the parent is gone, then obviously it's going to impact their the child's academics. And so there's so many things that we like to consider, and it's a lot. It's a long list. I understand that, but I mean, I tell my clients, this is your voice. This is your opportunity to convince an officer as to why you deserve to be here, right? And so it's a lot of documenting, but we try to provide them with everything so that the officer doesn't have any doubts about why this person deserves to remain here.
Steve, anything to add on the documents and putting forth the best case and what other supporting evidence people should be bringing to the forefront there?
Yeah, just one thing I'd like to add is for the waiver that Anita was just referring to about lying to the government. It also deals with misrepresentation. So the government knows what you said. They track what you said when you had your interview at the border to come in on a visa, and very often they nail you for a misrepresentation. Maybe you said, "Oh, I'm just going to visit some family members" when you're coming to get married. So they know what you said. So very often we need to find out what happened at the border. So we're asking a lot of questions. What did you tell them? What happened at the border? Because it's a waiver that we need to prepare for. So when we first start the process, we need to set people on a path to get a waiver approved, even if we're not certain they're going to need one. So if we think there might be a waiver needed here, so we advise people to start preparing for the waiver, and then we help them do that so that even if they don't need a waiver, well, they will be prepared if they do. So.
Steve, a second ago, you mentioned a little bit about the timeline, or at least how many months that this takes. I would love for you to kind of go back and take us through that process, because I think that is something that's lost, where people don't know how long this process takes to apply, get the waiver granted. Can you walk us through that?
Yeah, I'd be glad to. So let's talk to do consular processing when most of our clients are going back to Ciudad Juarez in Mexico for their interview. So the first step is to come in for your consultation. We go over your case. We find out whether you're ineligible, find out what type of problems you're going to have. And then we file the I-130. That's the petition for the alien relative. And once that is approved, after about 12, 15 months, then if they have an unlawful presence, or if they came in illegally, then we need to file the I-601. And hopefully they have actually been going to the doctor and they have documents ready. So then we can submit the waiver, and that usually takes 30 months to get that approved. So we're already about 3 or 4 years down the road. So it's a long process and it takes a lot of patience. And that takes 30 months to get approved. So in the meantime, we can take the next step of applying for the immigrant visa while the waiver is in the process of being adjudicated. So sometimes these cases end up taking 5, 6 years before they actually have their interview. And so you need a lot of patience, a lot of hope, a lot of trust.
Yeah, a lot of patience, a lot, man,
Mhm.
almost
A lot
5
of
years.
patience.
Yeah, and
It's a long process.
So let me piggyback on that, and Yanira, I would love for you to jump in on this answer. So 5 years, I'm sure people say, well, wait a minute. Well, can I work? Can I travel during that time while a waiver application is pending? Like, can people do those things, or does it depend on the type of case, Yanira?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. A lot of people are misguided and confused. Again, it really depends on the case because many people come to our office and we tell them, yeah, it's going to take 5 years. And they're like, okay, that's fine, but am I going to get a work permit? And we're honest and we tell them, look, you're not going to get a work permit. You're going to get your green card. And that's only when you're back from your interview abroad, right? So unless you enter the United States legally, for example, with a visa, Then, if you're found inadmissible when you go to your interview, you file a waiver. Then you can still get a work permit and keep renewing it until they have decided on the waiver. But otherwise, you don't get a work permit. There are other cases where the client, the applicant, let's just say it's in Mexico, and they're waiting for their waiver to be approved. They can't travel, right? They can't travel to the United States because they've been barred, right? Like an officer in Ciudad Juarez found them inadmissible and said, you can't get a visa until your waiver is approved. So they would need to remain in Mexico until the waiver is approved.
Steve, I want to ask you what are some common mistakes that you have seen over your time doing this that people make during the waiver process that cause maybe delays or even denials up front? You mentioned something about what they said at the border versus when they're actually applying for it. Is that one of the common mistakes? Are there others that people make?
That is one of the, now there's two different processes we're talking. I don't want to mix them up too much. One process, the one that's taken 5 years, they're going down to Ciudad Juarez for their interview or going to their home country for their interview. That's called consular processing. And the waiver on those is kind of front loaded. So you do your petition, then you do your waiver, and then you do your visa processing. Now, people who came in with a visa and they might have had visa misrepresentation at the border, they would be able to, they have their interview after about 12 months after we file the paperwork. And then if they're found inadmissible at their interview in, let's say in Portland or at their home state, then they can file the waiver. And that's a different story because then they've got a work permit possibly, because you can file a work permit at the beginning of that adjustment of status process. So, and then that waiver is probably going to take another 2 years too. So it's a little different scenario. And so a lot of times what we're seeing is people who hopefully, if they haven't been honest with us and they have something that they're not sharing with us, thinking that the government doesn't know about it, very often that comes back to haunt them because the government knows an awful lot of stuff about everybody, about their entrances and their exits and what they've said. So honesty is the best case scenario. So
As we wrap here, the goal always with these podcasts is obviously somebody listens to this, gets the information, they reach out to you guys. So, in that vein, if somebody is listening to this right now, what is the very, very, very first step that you would advise them to take if they think they might need a waiver? This is for both of you guys. Steve, I'll start with you first.
well, I think if they think they're going to need a waiver, probably they first need to see an attorney to find out what their possibilities are, because not everybody's even going to get to the state where not everybody needs needs a waiver, because they maybe be totally inadmissible because they have the permanent bar. Now, the permanent bar we haven't talked about. That's a person who has been in the United States for accumulation of 1 year after April 1st, 1997, and then they've gone back and they left the country and then they came back in illegally or without an inspection. Now that person has a permanent bar, and so for them to start this process and start doing the waiver, they're wasting their time and their money. So first you have to clarify whether you even have the possibility, which is why we offer free consultation, because I believe everybody has the right to know whether they have a possibility or not before they start spending a lot of money, because waivers sometimes are pretty expensive.
Yeah. Yanira, what about you? What piece of advice out there for folks?
I think that in this environment, right, we're all suffering from stress and anxiety, right? And so if you want to produce a strong waiver, you have to begin treating, right? I think that a lot of people find it hard sometimes to go to the doctor, one, because they're busy or they have children and families to take care of. But for a waiver to be successful, we have to have evidence. So we always tell our client, like, you need to begin by taking care of yourself, which, what does that mean? You have to go to the doctor, right? You have to document all of this because we're trying to convince an officer that you need your family member to either A, stay here in the United States, or two, to return by your side, right? If I don't have that evidence, it's your word against theirs. So it's always going to be the evidence that's going to convince an officer. So I think medical treatment will be number one always. And if we don't have that, then that just makes a very weak waiver, which in this case we wouldn't even want to take because we wouldn't want to risk this person, right, if you're here in the United States, because the denial could result also in a deportation. So we wouldn't want to take that step. But
Yeah.
as always, I think the number one step is treat, treat, treat.
Yeah. Very well said. Steve, Yanira, thank you for the time and insights on this. As always, we truly appreciate it.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
And thank you to everybody out there for joining us on another installment of Paso a Paso Immigration Help with Steve Miller. If you or a loved one right now, you need help with the waiver process or any family immigration process, Affordable Immigration, like you heard Steve mention before, they offer a free consultation. Call 971-308-5892 or visit immigraternw.com to get started today. Don't forget to like, subscribe, leave us a review and comment, or share this episode with someone who needs to hear it. As always, I'm Mike Leon. We'll see everybody next time.
Thank you, Mike.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.